UFC Fight Night, Dos Anjos versus Luque. This is like the fourth time I've tried filming this here. Finally got the horizontal camera going. Can't believe it took me this long to switch from the vertical iPhone filming setup. It was so bad before, but I think this is going to be a lot better. But today I'm going to go through all the fights on this weekend's card in Vegas, and I'm going to be breaking down each of these fights. I'm going to give my picks, and without further ado, let's get right into it. We have a flyweight fight between Juliana Miller and Luana Santos. Luana Santos, she's a newcomer here. She's a European judo champion. Miller, on the other hand, she won the Ultimate Fighter, only has a few fights under her belt as well. So not like she's coming in with a lot more experience than Luana Santos, who this is probably her 6th or 7th pro fight, I believe. We're getting Miller at plus odds here, plus 125. I'm a bit of a judo hater in MMA, to be honest. I mean, we've seen it work a lot in women's MMA in the past, of course, with Ronda Rousey, and we got Tabitha Ritchie doing it as well, showing up for the judo community. But I think that Juliana Miller's got good enough takedown defense to defend against some of like the hip tosses that Luana Santos likes to throw out. And I think we're getting good value here with Miller just because people are down on her after her most recent loss versus Hardy. I think her takedown defense is a lot better than she showed in that fight. She literally took herself down a lot of those times. I don't know what she was doing. I think there was a lot of stuff that she could have cleaned up. So I'm liking Juliana Miller by decision here. Next up, we have bantamweights Damon Blackshear versus Jose Johnson. Jose Johnson is the big underdog in this one, coming in at 2-1. I'm liking the odds we're seeing here with Jose Johnson. I think I'm ready to declare him my dog of the week. He's looked explosive in his past fights. I think his record is a little skewed. He's like 15-7, I want to say. But two of those losses were the very first two fights of his career. JDM comes to mind. He's got that 12-2 record. But when it's your first couple of fights, I don't put too much stock into that. So really, if you look at it more as like a 15-5 fighter, now we're looking at a guy who's winning 3 of every 4 fights. It's really good. He's taking on Damon Blackshear, who's the big favorite in this one, but Blackshear really hasn't shown any dominance in any of his fights. He's got that loss versus one of the Basharat brothers. Really hasn't. He's kind of solid everywhere, but not exceptional anywhere. I think Johnson could shock a lot of people here and find a KO, so I'm taking Johnson by KO. I think he's going to have a big advantage on the feet. Could definitely spend a lot of this fight on his back, though, so it's going to be up to him whether he can stand up if he does get taken down. Moving along to a strawweight fight between Jaqueline Amorim and Montserrat Conejo. Conejo got run through in her last fight in 30 seconds by Amanda Lemos. Lemos actually was the first punch thrown in the entire fight. Knocked her clean out. It's got to be one of the fastest knockouts ever, but that was in 2021, and she hasn't fought since. Amorim, on the other hand, is the -250 favorite. I'm going to have to trust the public on this one. She's got a few submission wins under her belt. I think she finds a sub here versus the very inactive Conejo. Next up is a heavyweight fight between Martin Buday and Josh Parisian. Parisian is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. He's got losses to Jamal Pogues, Dontel Mays, and Parker Porter. Buday, on the other hand, he's undefeated in the UFC. He's shown pretty good striking in those fights. He had a good stand-up fight versus Lucas Brzeski, I think his name is, where he showed off good cardio for a guy his size. I mean, he comes in usually around the heavyweight limit and is probably showing up in the cage a few pounds heavier. So him being able to keep up a pace for 3 rounds, I think that's going to give him a really big advantage here versus Parisian. Buday has yet to get a KO in the UFC, so I believe at least if he does, then he only has one, the rest by decision. I think he's going to just point his way to a victory here, rely on leg kicks and just jabs and simple combos to keep Parisian off of him. Parisian likes to go for takedowns. I think he can gas himself out doing that, and Buday will be able to coast to a unanimous decision. Next up is a featherweight fight between Francis Marshall and Isaac Dulgarian. Francis Marshall, he's coming off of a loss to William Gomis, French fighter who was making his UFC debut. Francis Marshall is pretty good though. That was his first loss of his career. He's got KO wins, he's got submission wins. Really athletic dude. He's gonna be taking on Isaac Dulgarian. Dulgarian is a really powerful fighter at 145. Has a few first round KOs under his belt, I believe. But he's coming off back-to-back knee injuries. I read when I was just reading up on him, he injured his LCL twice. Not sure what part of the knee that is. Not a doctor, but back-to-back injuries like that is just not good. And I'm wondering if rushing into the UFC like this, as a guy who's only had 5 professional fights, I believe, not sure that's the best idea for him, especially if he's coming off of an injury. Might not be at his absolute best here against Francis Marshall. So I'm going to take Marshall in this one by decision. I don't know if he hands Dulgarian his first finish or finishes him for the first time in his career. But I do think that Marshall's just going to be more locked in here. He's got the UFC experience, and he's not coming off of an injury. So Marshall by decision is going to be the pick. Next up, we have a lightweight fight between Terrance McKinney and Mike Breeden. McKinney's the big favorite in this one. Guys, he just lost in July versus Sadikov. It was a weird submission. I thought he was looking pretty good in that fight, but his arm got caught behind his back, and it was just ugly, and then he just got choked out there. Sadikov is no slouch, though. He's definitely a highly touted prospect, but you just hate to see McKinney take another loss like that after he already has had some struggles recently. Of course, the KO loss to one of the Boom Fims. So he's coming off, literally probably less than 4 weeks from that last loss. So that definitely worries me going into this one. He's the big favorite here, but he's taking on Mike Breeden, who Breeden is also coming off of back-to-back losses to Natan Levy and Alex Hernandez. But he's not just some dude. I mean, he's got pretty good hands. He's explosive hands. I mean, he hurt Levy a few times in their fight, even though he did lose, I think, a unanimous decision in that one. I'm looking for McKinney really to show a lot of pressure in this fight, get back to his explosive ways. I think there's a balance between putting it all out there and sort of conserving yourself, and I think he's at his best when he's within reason, going pedal to the metal, bringing the fight to the other guy. So I think he'll find a first round finish in this one here. I just hope that he's not underestimating Mike Breeden, especially on such a short turnaround from his most previous loss. But yeah, I'm really looking for Terrance to get back on track here. He's a guy who, if you would ask me, 6 months ago, a year ago, my thoughts about him, I really thought he had title champion potential. So we'll see how he does in this one. A first round finish would put him right back on track, though, to hopefully put a little win streak together. Next up is a bantamweight fight between Marcus McGhee and JP Buys. Marcus McGhee is, I believe, the biggest favorite on the card at minus 370. He won his debut versus Journey Newsome on short notice. He finished Newsome in that fight. I picked McGhee to get a finish in that one. He showed really good takedown defense in that fight, and he's taking on JP Buys, who primarily wants to grapple and try and submit you. So I think it's just a bad matchup for JP Buys. And on top of that, in 4 of his 5 losses, JP Buys has been finished. So I think Marcus McGhee will find a finish here and really set him up for to make a run towards the top 15 in the bantamweight division with a couple more wins. Next up is a middleweight fight between Josh Fremd and Jamie Pickett. Guys, you already know what time it is. It's always fade Pickett. I mean, if he doesn't get nut-shotted by Bo Nickel, does he go on to win that fight? I think you could entertain that argument, but Josh Fremd, I think, is just, he's bigger, stronger. He's got that grappling base, strong grappling, and I think he finds a submission in this one. Probably gets Jamie Pickett's back and chokes him out. Next is another middleweight fight between Tafon and Nchuwki, and he's taking on AJ Dobson. Tafon is the slight favorite here. He is moving down to middleweight after getting KO'd in back-to-back fights at light heavyweight. Those KO losses were to Carlos Olberg and Murzakanov, so those are two of the better prospects at 205. But yeah, Tafon's got a lot of power. He's still only 28 years old, and I think this is going to be a good change for him. The fact that he is able to go to 185, and that just shows that he's locked in and really committed to getting his UFC career back on track. AJ Dobson is yet to get a UFC win, and I think the power of Tafon is really going to give him a lot of troubles. I think Tafon gives AJ Dobson his first KO defeat this weekend. After that, we have Iasmin Lucindo taking on Polyana Viana. It is a strawweight fight. Lucindo is about the 2-1 favorite in this one. She's 1-1 the UFC and coming off a win versus Brogan Walker, so not like she's really been in there with the best of the best. Polyana, on the other hand, she's had 8 UFC fights, and I really look for that when you have a more inexperienced strawweight fighter like Lucindo taking on someone with a lot of experience. I think Viana is just going to have the grappling advantage in this one, and Lucindo has been submitted by far worse fighters than Viana, so Viana by submission is going to be the pick here. Next up is a light heavyweight fight between Khalil Rountree and another guy who is making his debut at a new weight class, Chris Daukaus. Chris Daukaus said it himself. He never should have been a heavyweight. He was a fat 205er. And I think the entire MMA community said, yes, dude, we've been trying to tell you that. Daukaus is a guy who did have some success at 205, but 2 of those 4 wins were versus Alexei Oleinik and Abdurakhimov. So he was just kind of taking out the old Russian guys who everyone pretty much beats. And I think Rountree's just a really tough matchup here. Rountree's hits super hard. The striking difference, I think, is going to be pretty stark. Rountree, I think, still has more power than Chris Daukaus, and the speed difference is probably where we're going to see the biggest advantage for Rountree. I think Rountree gets a KO in this one, probably kicks Daukaus in that belly a few times while he's on the ground. That's become sort of Rountree's signature as of late. So Rountree by KO is going to be the pick there. Our co-main event is a featherweight fight between Hakeem Dawodu and Cub Swanson. Dawodu is the minus 230 favorite here, and he's taking on the veteran Cub Swanson, who's about a 2-1 underdog. Man, Cub's been in there with everybody. He's been in there with Chad Mendez, Charles Oliveira, Frankie Edgar, Max Holloway, Brian Ortega. I mean, that's like not even half of the guys that he's faced in the UFC. Been in the UFC, I believe, since 2012, early 2010s. Guy's got loads and loads of experience, which is going to give him a big edge here versus Dawodu. But we really have seen that Cub is not the same guy that he used to be. He started putting together a bit of a streak, got a couple KOs back to back, but I mean, one of them was worse versus Chrome Gracie, who's not an MMA fighter. And when he did take on a guy like Jonathan Martinez, a better prospect, and that was even at 135, he got finished. Just couldn't really handle the leg kick pressure from Martinez. I expect Dawodu to just outlast Swanson here. We've seen it a bunch of times. These older fighters with a lot of miles get not ideal matchups, and it ends up costing them. I mean, I would never count out Cub Swanson, and I think as far as 39-year-old fighters go, I think he's one of the better ones you'll see. And he's really going to try and lean on that experience. I just think that stamina and just your ability to take a beating is one of the first things to go as you age in this game. And with a guy with as many fight miles as Cub Swanson has, I just think Dawodu will outlast him here. So I think Dawodu wins this one by decision. And finally, under our co-main, we have a welterweight fight between Rafael dos Anjos and Vicente Luque. These are two staples of the welterweight division. Dos Anjos obviously is on another level. He's been in the mix in the UFC since 2008. I looked it up. He's like, I think, top 5 or 6 most tenured fighters in the UFC. Only like John Jones and a couple other guys have been in the organization longer than him. And the crazy part is he's been good that entire time. He's 38 years old. And is he the same Dos Anjos that won the title? No, but has he ever been, has he ever been an easy win for anyone? Absolutely not. I don't think it'll be an easy win here, but I do think that people are counting out Luque. Luque is the underdog in this one. Despite being bigger than RDA, being the more natural welterweight between the two, RDA obviously spent a lot of time in the lightweight division, majority of his career. Luque hasn't looked great, but those losses were to Bilal and Jeff Neal, which are, two of the really good guys in the division. Bilal should be fighting for the title soon, and Jeff Neal just has hands of steel. I think Luque's got a lot to fight for here. He really needs a win to protect his top 15 ranking. And between these two guys, I mean, do either of them really have a chance at the title? I wouldn't count on it, but if either of these guys were to have a better shot at making another run at the belt, Luque is definitely the one. He's got a lot more time left. He's only 31 or so. So I'm going to take Luque in this one. I think he probably finds a finish versus Dos Anjos. I highly doubt this goes 5 rounds. If either guy wins this, they're putting the other away. This one really is a toss-up. I mean, I'm liking the value out of Luque and the size difference. He's shown a decent grappling ability himself. But if Dos Anjos climbs on his back, you might as well turn off the TV. I think it'll be over. So we'll see how Lucente deals with the grappling pressure of Dos Anjos. I'm pretty excited for this fight, and this card as a whole, but this really just seems like an appetizer for the following week where we have the belts on the line. But that is my picks for this week. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. I'll catch you all in the next one.